He thought he knew every secret his family was hiding, but the sound behind that basement wall was about to change everything. Vincent Romano stepped out of his black SUV and stared at the sprawling estate perched on the edge of Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. The house belonged to his younger brother, Ethan, a man who preferred quiet luxury over the constant attention that followed the Romano name. Rain tapped softly against the stone driveway. The late afternoon sky hung low and gray, turning the mansion into a silhouette of glass and shadow. Vincent adjusted the cuffs of his charcoal coat and climbed the front steps. He wasn't here for a social visit. Ethan had missed 3 meetings in a row, ignored calls from family attorneys, and canceled a charity event that carried their father's name. None of that felt like Ethan. Something was wrong. The house was strangely quiet when Vincent entered. No music. No staff moving through the halls. No signs of life beyond the faint hum of the air conditioning. Expensive paintings lined the walls. Crystal chandeliers reflected cold light across polished marble floors. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Vincent slowly walked deeper into the mansion. Years of experience had taught him that silence often revealed more than noise ever could. He checked the study first. Empty. The kitchen. Empty. The sunroom overlooking the lake. Empty. Then he noticed a faint draft coming from a hallway near the rear of the house. At the end stood a heavy door leading downstairs. The basement. Vincent frowned. Ethan rarely used it. As he descended the narrow staircase, the air became cooler. The smell of concrete replaced the scent of expensive candles drifting through the upper floors. A single bulb glowed above him. The basement stretched wider than he remembered. Storage shelves lined the walls. Boxes sat untouched beneath thin layers of dust. He was about to turn back when he heard it. Tap. 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 Vincent froze. The sound was so faint he almost convinced himself he imagined it. Then it came again. Tap. 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 Not pipes. Not machinery. Something deliberate. Something human. Every muscle in his body tightened. He followed the sound across the basement floor until he reached a section of wall hidden behind tall metal shelving. The tapping stopped. Silence returned. Vincent slowly moved the shelf aside. His eyes narrowed. There were scratches on the concrete floor. Fresh scratches. Signs that the shelf had been moved before. His pulse quickened. Behind it, partially concealed by shadow, was a narrow steel door painted the same color as the wall. No one had ever mentioned a room down here. Vincent reached for the handle. It was locked. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he heard a voice. Barely above a whisper. Weak. Careful. Terrified. Please. The single word seemed to drain all warmth from the room. Vincent's heart sank. Whoever was behind that door wasn't supposed to be found. And for the first time in years, the most powerful man in the city felt something he almost never allowed himself to feel. Fear. Vincent stood motionless beside the hidden steel door. The basement suddenly felt smaller, the cold air heavier. For several seconds he said nothing, listening carefully. On the other side, silence returned. Then came the faint sound of movement, cautious and uncertain, as though whoever was inside had learned long ago not to trust unexpected voices. Vincent pulled his phone from his pocket and switched on the flashlight. The narrow beam revealed a keypad mounted beside the frame. He recognized the model immediately. It was expensive security equipment designed to keep people out. Or keep something hidden. His jaw tightened. Ethan had never mentioned this room. Not once. Vincent entered a master override code that worked on most security systems owned by the family. A soft click echoed through the basement. The lock released. For a moment he hesitated. A strange feeling settled in his chest. The closer he came to the truth, the less he believed he wanted to find it. Slowly he opened the door. A narrow room appeared beyond it. The space was clean but unsettlingly bare. A small lamp cast a warm yellow glow across concrete walls. A folding chair stood near a table. Shelves held bottled water, books, and neatly folded blankets. It was not what Vincent expected. Then his eyes found the woman sitting quietly in the corner. She immediately recoiled from the doorway. Fear flashed across her face before she lowered her gaze. She looked exhausted. Her dark curls framed a face that seemed older than her years. A gray sweater hung loosely from her shoulders. Despite everything, she carried herself with remarkable dignity. Vincent noticed something else. Relief. Not complete relief. Not safety. But the fragile relief of someone who had spent a long time believing no one would ever come. Neither spoke at first. The silence stretched between them. Finally Vincent took a cautious step forward. "My name is Vincent Romano," he said quietly. The woman closed her eyes. A single tear slipped down her cheek. "I know," she whispered. Vincent froze. "You know who I am?" She nodded slowly. Her voice trembled. "I have been trying to reach you for months." Every word felt like another crack forming beneath his feet. Vincent studied her carefully. She did not look confused. She did not look surprised. She looked disappointed. As though the person she had hoped would arrive had come far too late. "What is your name?" he asked. "Naomi Carter." The answer came softly. Vincent repeated it in his mind. The name meant nothing to him, yet something about the way she said it made him feel he should have known it. Naomi glanced toward the door as if expecting someone else to appear. "Is Ethan here?" she asked. Vincent watched fear return to her eyes. Not panic. Not hatred. Fear. The kind that grows slowly over time. "No," Vincent answered. "He is not here." Naomi lowered her head and released a breath she seemed to have been holding for weeks. Then she looked back at him. Her eyes were tired but steady. "Then you need to leave before he comes back," she said. "Because if Ethan finds out you discovered this room, everything is about to change." Vincent stared at Naomi for a long moment. Her warning lingered in the cold air between them. Most people reacted to the Romano name with fear, respect, or calculated politeness. Naomi reacted with concern. Not for herself. For him. That unsettled him more than anything he had seen since opening the hidden door. "Tell me what is going on," he said quietly. Naomi looked down at her hands. They trembled slightly before she folded them together. The movement seemed automatic, a habit formed from months of trying to remain composed. For several seconds she said nothing. Then she walked slowly toward the small table and picked up a worn notebook. The cover had faded from constant handling. She held it carefully, as though it contained something fragile. "I worked here," she said. "Not in this room. In the house." Vincent frowned. "For Ethan?" Naomi nodded. Rain continued tapping softly against the foundation above them. The sound seemed distant now. "I started almost a year ago," she continued. "I cleaned the guest rooms. Organized files. Helped coordinate charity events. Everyone thought Ethan was generous." A sad smile appeared for a moment. "So did I." Vincent felt an uncomfortable tightening in his chest. The description matched the brother he thought he knew. Ethan was polished, educated, respected by politicians and business leaders. Newspapers praised him. Foundations honored him. He was the brother who avoided controversy while Vincent carried the weight of the family's reputation. "What changed?" Vincent asked. Naomi looked toward the shelves lining the wall. One night I was preparing documents for a fundraising event. I found records that did not match. Donations were being reported in one place and moved somewhere else in another. Vincent's eyes narrowed. Financial records? Yes. Naomi swallowed. At first I thought it was a mistake. I tried to fix it. Her voice grew softer. I should have stayed quiet. The room fell silent. Vincent could hear the faint hum of the ventilation system. Naomi sat on the folding chair and stared at the notebook resting in her lap. I wrote letters, she said suddenly. 7 of them. Vincent felt a chill run through him. Letters? Naomi nodded. To you. His expression hardened. I never received any letters. I know. Her answer came without hesitation. At first I thought you ignored them. Then I realized they never left this house. Vincent's jaw tightened. Every word deepened the crack forming in his understanding of the situation. Naomi slowly opened the notebook. Several folded pages rested inside. The paper was worn and creased. She handed one to him. Vincent unfolded it carefully. At the top was a date from nearly 5 months earlier. Beneath it, written in neat handwriting, was a plea for help addressed directly to him. His name appeared again and again throughout the page. She had trusted him long before she ever met him. Vincent lowered the letter. Naomi watched him quietly. There was no anger in her eyes. No accusation. Somehow that made everything worse. I kept writing because people said you protected innocent people when no one else would, she whispered. I believed them. Vincent looked at the letter in his hands and felt the weight of every unanswered word. For the first time that evening, he began to understand that whatever secret was hidden inside Ethan's world was far larger than a locked room beneath a house. The letter remained in Vincent's hand long after Naomi stopped speaking. The neat handwriting blurred slightly as questions collided inside his mind. 5 months. For 5 months someone had intercepted every attempt she made to reach him. That was not an accident. That required planning. Control. Access. Vincent carefully folded the page and slipped it into his coat pocket. Then he looked around the hidden room again, this time with different eyes. The shelves. The lamp. The ventilation system. The stocked supplies. Nothing here was random. Someone had invested time and money to create a place designed to disappear from the world above. Naomi watched him quietly. She seemed to recognize the exact moment his assumptions began to unravel. You are starting to see it now, she said softly. Vincent turned toward her. See what? Naomi lowered her gaze. That I was never supposed to leave. The words settled heavily in the room. Vincent felt a cold anger building beneath the surface. Not explosive anger. Something far more dangerous. The kind that arrived when trust began breaking apart piece by piece. He pulled out his phone and opened a secure application connected to his private investigators. Within seconds he sent a series of encrypted instructions. Search financial records. Access security archives. Review staff employment files. Track every employee who had worked at the estate during the last 12 months. No explanations. No questions. His team would understand. Naomi watched the screen. You think the answers are in the records? Vincent looked at her. They always are. For the first time a faint expression crossed her face. It was not hope exactly. More like cautious disbelief. As if she had spent so long expecting disappointment that she no longer knew what trust felt like. 30 minutes later Vincent's phone vibrated. The first report arrived. His eyes scanned the information. Then he read it again. Naomi Carter. Employment status, voluntarily resigned 7 months ago. Forwarding address, unknown. Personnel file, closed. Vincent's jaw tightened. That is impossible, he said quietly. Naomi gave a humorless smile. I know. Another report arrived. Security footage covering the period surrounding Naomi's disappearance had been permanently erased due to a system malfunction. A third report followed. Multiple maintenance requests related to the basement level had been classified and sealed under Ethan Romano's personal authorization. Vincent stared at the screen. One coincidence could happen. Two raised suspicion. Three formed a pattern. The room suddenly felt smaller. Above them, thunder rolled across the distant lake. Rain struck the windows somewhere overhead. Naomi slowly stood. There is more. Vincent lifted his eyes. What do you mean? She walked to one of the shelves and reached behind several books. From the narrow gap she removed a small flash drive wrapped carefully inside a cloth handkerchief. Vincent immediately understood why she had hidden it. Naomi held it tightly for a moment before extending it toward him. This is why everything changed, she whispered. The night I found it, I stopped being an employee. Vincent accepted the drive. It weighed almost nothing in his palm. Yet somehow it felt heavier than anything he had carried into the house. Because deep down he already knew that whatever was stored inside would not only expose secrets. It would force him to decide whether loyalty belonged to family or to the truth. Vincent stared at the flash drive resting in his palm while thunder rolled beyond the basement walls. For several seconds neither he nor Naomi moved. The tiny device seemed insignificant compared to the sprawling estate above them, yet both understood it had the power to explain everything. Vincent finally slipped it into his coat pocket. You kept this all this time, he asked. Naomi nodded. Because it was the only thing nobody knew I still had. Her voice was calm, but exhaustion lingered beneath every word. Vincent looked at her carefully. The longer he remained in that hidden room, the harder it became to reconcile the facts in front of him with the image of Ethan he had carried for years. His phone vibrated again. Another report from his investigators. He opened the message and immediately felt his stomach tighten. Additional employment records had surfaced. Not only had Naomi been listed as having resigned voluntarily, but several former staff members had signed statements claiming they witnessed her leave the estate on her own. Vincent read each name twice. Every statement was nearly identical. The language was too polished. Too coordinated. It looked less like testimony and more like a script. Naomi watched his expression change. They all said I left, did they not? Vincent slowly lowered the phone. How did you know? A sad smile touched her face. Because that is what they were told to say. Silence settled between them. The rain continued outside. Somewhere above, a grandfather clock chimed the hour. Naomi walked toward the small table and rested one hand against its edge. At first I believed someone would notice I was gone, she said quietly. A friend. A coworker. Anybody. She paused. But people accept simple explanations when the truth is inconvenient. Vincent felt the weight of her words. The world above had continued moving. Charity galas had been held. Business deals had been signed. News articles had praised Ethan's generosity. Meanwhile, Naomi's existence had been reduced to a line in a personnel file. Voluntarily resigned. Case closed. Vincent suddenly remembered seeing Ethan interviewed on television months earlier. Smiling. Relaxed. Speaking about community investment and public trust. The memory now felt distorted, like a photograph hiding a second image beneath the surface. His phone vibrated once more. This time the message came directly from his lead investigator. A preliminary review of financial transfers connected to Ethan's private accounts had revealed multiple shell organizations receiving charitable donations and redirecting funds elsewhere. The amounts stretched into the millions. Vincent read the report twice. Then a third time. The room seemed colder than before. Naomi had not stumbled onto a bookkeeping error. She had uncovered something far larger. Something capable of destroying reputations, careers, and carefully constructed public images. Naomi studied his face. "You found it, did not you?" Vincent looked up slowly. For the first time since opening the hidden door, he could no longer defend his brother inside his own mind. Every new fact pointed in the same direction. Every explanation collapsed beneath the next discovery. The man he thought he knew was beginning to disappear. And in his place stood someone Vincent was no longer certain he recognized at all. The storm had intensified by the time Vincent left the hidden room. Rain hammered against the windows of the estate, turning the glass walls into sheets of silver. Naomi remained downstairs, resting for the first time in months without constantly listening for footsteps above her. Vincent had promised he would return. The promise felt heavier than any business agreement he had ever signed. As he climbed the staircase, the house no longer felt familiar. Every hallway seemed to hide questions. Every polished surface reflected a version of reality he could no longer trust. His phone rang. Ethan's name appeared on the screen. Vincent stared at it for several seconds before answering. "You are at my house," Ethan said. It was not a question. Vincent looked through the rain-covered windows toward the dark shoreline beyond the property. "I stopped by." Ethan laughed softly. "Without calling first. That is unusual for you." Vincent listened carefully. The voice sounded normal. Calm. Controlled. The same voice he had known his entire life. Yet now he found himself searching for something beneath it. "We need to talk," Vincent said. Silence followed. Only for a second. But it was enough. "About what?" Ethan finally asked. Vincent's eyes moved across the room. Family photographs lined a nearby shelf. Vacations. Charity events. Holidays. Two brothers smiling beside each other year after year. The images suddenly felt like evidence from someone else's life. "About the company," Vincent replied. "There are things I want clarified." Another pause. "Tomorrow," Ethan said. "I am flying back tonight. We can meet in the morning." The call ended. Vincent lowered the phone slowly. He knew his brother well enough to recognize caution when he heard it. Ethan already suspected something was wrong. Within minutes, Vincent's security team arrived at the estate. Four trusted men entered through the front doors. Men who had worked beside him for years. Men whose loyalty belonged to him alone. Vincent gave precise instructions. Naomi would be moved somewhere safe. No records. No public reports. No mistakes. One of the men looked surprised. "Who exactly are we protecting?" Vincent glanced toward the basement door. Someone who should have been protected a long time ago. The room fell silent. Nobody asked another question. An hour later, Vincent sat alone in Ethan's study. The flash drive rested on the desk before him. Lightning flashed beyond the windows. For a brief moment, the entire room glowed white. Vincent inserted the drive into a secure laptop. Files appeared instantly. Spreadsheets. Account transfers. Contracts. Internal communications. Hundreds of documents. He opened the first folder. Then the second. Then the third. The deeper he looked, the worse it became. Every file confirmed the same truth. Money donated to help families had been redirected through layers of organizations controlled by people connected to Ethan. The pattern stretched back years. Not months. Years. Vincent leaned back in his chair. His heart felt strangely hollow. This was no misunderstanding. No isolated mistake. It was deliberate. Systematic. Carefully hidden behind a reputation built on generosity. He closed the laptop and stared into the darkness beyond the windows. Somewhere over the lake, thunder rolled again. Tomorrow morning he would sit across from his brother. And for the first time in his life, Vincent Romano was not sure whether he was about to confront family or a stranger. Ethan arrived shortly after sunrise. The storm had passed, leaving the lake calm and gray beneath a blanket of low clouds. Vincent stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows of the study, watching the water while a cup of untouched coffee cooled beside him. He heard the front door open. Familiar footsteps crossed the marble floor. For years those footsteps had meant family. This morning they carried uncertainty. Ethan entered wearing a navy overcoat and an easy smile. "You look like you have not slept," he said as he removed his gloves. Vincent studied him carefully. The confidence. The composure. The polished appearance that had convinced politicians, journalists, and donors that Ethan Romano represented the future of the family. "Neither have you," Vincent replied. Ethan laughed softly and sat across from the desk. "You said there were questions." Vincent remained standing. The distance between them felt larger than the room itself. "There are." Ethan folded his hands. "Then ask." For several seconds Vincent said nothing. He remembered fishing trips when they were boys. Their father teaching them how to shake hands properly. Family dinners filled with laughter. Memories rose and fell through his mind like old photographs drifting across water. Then he thought about Naomi. About 7 unanswered letters. About a hidden room that should never have existed. The warmth vanished from his expression. "Do you know Naomi Carter?" Ethan's smile disappeared. Not dramatically. Not suddenly. Just enough for Vincent to notice. The silence that followed answered more than words ever could. Ethan leaned back in his chair. "Why are we talking about a former employee?" Vincent slowly placed one of Naomi's letters onto the desk between them. Ethan stared at it. Neither man moved. The room felt perfectly still. "Because former employees do not usually spend months trying to reach me," Vincent said quietly. Ethan's eyes lowered to the familiar handwriting. For the first time uncertainty appeared behind his carefully controlled expression. "You do not understand what you are looking at," he said. Vincent almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was predictable. "Then explain it to me." Ethan stood and walked toward the windows. Some people become confused. They misunderstand situations. They create stories. Vincent listened without interrupting. Every sentence sounded rehearsed. Every answer felt prepared long before the question was asked. Ethan finally turned back toward him. "You have spent one night looking at fragments. I have spent years building something important." Vincent's gaze hardened. "Important things do not require hidden rooms." The words landed like stones. Ethan froze. The color drained from his face. For a moment neither brother spoke. Outside, sunlight finally pushed through the clouds and reflected across the lake. Inside the study, however, the world seemed darker than ever. Ethan looked directly at Vincent. "You went downstairs." It was not a question. Vincent nodded once. The silence that followed stretched across the room. Years of trust balanced on its edge. And in that moment Vincent realized the decision he had feared was no longer waiting in the future. It was standing directly in front of him. The room remained silent after Ethan's question. Vincent did not look away. Years ago, a glance from either brother could settle an argument before it began. Today neither man was willing to surrender ground. Ethan slowly walked back toward the desk and lowered himself into the chair. The confidence that once seemed effortless now looked carefully maintained, like a crack hidden beneath fresh paint. "You should have called me first," he said quietly. Vincent folded his arms. Would that have changed what I found? Ethan stared at the lake beyond the windows. For the first time since arriving, he looked tired. Not frightened. Not angry. Simply exhausted. Things became complicated, he said. Vincent almost smiled at the understatement. Complicated is a delayed flight. Complicated is a contract dispute. This is something else. Ethan lowered his head. The morning light filled the study, illuminating family photographs arranged along the shelves. Their parents smiled from silver frames. Childhood vacations. Graduation ceremonies. Milestones frozen in time. Vincent followed Ethan's gaze toward those memories. At what point did you stop recognizing yourself? He asked. Ethan remained silent. The question lingered between them. Finally he spoke. You think everything is simple because you only see the ending. You did not watch the pressure build. You did not sit through years of expectations. Vincent listened without interrupting. Every donation had conditions. Every project demanded results. Every politician wanted favors. Every board member wanted growth. The moment people see success, they stop asking if it is sustainable. Ethan's voice had become quieter. They only ask for more. Vincent understood pressure. He had carried it his entire life. But pressure did not explain everything. And Naomi, he asked. Ethan closed his eyes. For several seconds he did not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded smaller than before. She found documents she was never supposed to see. The admission settled heavily in the room. No excuses. No denials. Just truth. Vincent felt something inside him break. Not anger. Not surprise. Grief. Grief for the brother he thought he knew. Grief for every opportunity Ethan had ignored to choose a different path. Ethan looked up. I kept telling myself I would fix it. That I only needed more time. Vincent shook his head slowly. The problem with that lie is that eventually time runs out. Outside, sunlight spread across the lake. Inside, the study felt colder than ever. Vincent reached for his phone. Ethan immediately understood what was happening. Neither man moved. Neither raised his voice. The moment required neither. You are really going to do it, Ethan said. Vincent nodded once. I am. Ethan looked around the room one last time. At the photographs. At the desk. At the life he had spent years building. Then he lowered his eyes. There was no argument left. No explanation left. Only consequences. And as Vincent made the call that would change both of their lives forever, he realized that loyalty without integrity was not loyalty at all. It was surrender. 3 months later, the courthouse steps glowed beneath the warm light of an early spring morning. The long Wisconsin winter had finally released its grip on the city. People moved through the plaza carrying coffee cups and briefcases, unaware that a chapter of silence had finally come to an end. Naomi Carter stood near the entrance, her dark curls catching the sunlight as a gentle breeze moved through the square. She wore a simple navy dress and held a folder against her chest. Nothing about her appearance demanded attention. Yet there was something powerful in the way she carried herself now. Her shoulders were straight. Her eyes were steady. For the first time in a very long time, she looked like someone who belonged wherever she chose to stand. The months following her rescue had not been easy. There had been interviews, investigations, legal proceedings, and countless difficult conversations. But there had also been something she had nearly forgotten existed. Freedom. She had her own apartment overlooking a small park. She had friends who checked on her. She had mornings filled with sunlight instead of uncertainty. Most importantly, she had her name back. Not a file hidden in a cabinet. Not a forgotten employee record. Naomi Carter. A person. A citizen. A woman whose voice mattered. Across the street, Vincent Romano stood beside a black sedan. He remained far from the cameras gathering near the courthouse entrance. He had refused every interview request. Refused every opportunity to explain himself publicly. The story was not about him. It never had been. His gaze followed Naomi as she climbed the courthouse steps. She paused briefly and looked toward the sky. The gesture lasted only a second, but Vincent understood it. Some victories arrived with applause. Others arrived quietly, carried by the simple realization that fear no longer controlled your future. Naomi entered the building without looking back. The doors closed behind her. Vincent remained where he was. One of his longtime advisors approached carefully. "You could have protected your family name," the man said. Vincent watched the courthouse in silence. Then he shook his head. "A name means nothing if it costs someone their dignity." The advisor said nothing more. There was nothing left to say. The truth had already spoken for itself. As the morning sun climbed higher above the city, life continued moving forward. Cars passed. Pedestrians hurried along the sidewalks. Somewhere nearby, church bells echoed across the square. Ordinary sounds. Ordinary moments. Yet for Naomi, every one of them felt extraordinary because they belonged to a life she was finally free to live. Vincent looked toward the courthouse one final time before opening the car door. The weight he carried had not disappeared. Some wounds never fully healed. Some choices left scars no matter how necessary they were. But as he watched the sunlight spill across the stone steps where Naomi had walked moments earlier, he understood something his father had never taught him. Power could command obedience. Wealth could purchase influence. Fear could control a room. But none of those things could restore a person's dignity once it had been taken away. Only courage could do that. And on that day, the city remembered what dignity looks like.